Daf Yomi, Tractate, Bava Batra, page 109a. Top of the page with the words Dahachatarti Vahachada. From the fact that here there are two examples of the superiority of a son, designation of an ancestral field, and here there is only one demonstration of the superiority of a brother, levirate marriage. Sidei achuza gufa mehai tamahu dika kaimale letana klum yesh ibum ela b'makom she'ein ba hayesh bein ein ibum. The Gemara answers with regard to an ancestral field itself. The Tana establishes his ruling from this same reason. Is there levirate marriage except in a case where there is no son? In a case where there is a son, there is no levirate marriage. The determination that the redemption of the ancestral field by a son is in place of the redemption of the field by the father, whereas the redemption of the field by a brother is not, is based on the reasoning that the halacha of levirate marriage is not an indication that a brother is a closer relative than a son. Therefore, the halacha of an ancestral field cannot be regarded as a second example of the son's superiority, as it stems from the first example, that of levirate marriage. Ema she'ero zeha'av melamed she'a'av kodem lubas yachal yagdim leben tamud lomar hakarov karov kodem. The Gemara suggests an alternative derivation. Why should the father of the deceased inherit before only the brothers? Say that he should inherit before the daughter of the deceased as well, by interpreting the verse as follows: his kinsman, Numbers 27:11. This is referring to the father, and the Torah teaches that the father precedes the daughter of the deceased by inheriting from him. One might have thought that the father of the deceased should precede the son of the deceased in inheriting from him. The verse therefore states next to him, hakarov, teaching that the closer one is to the deceased. The earlier one is in the order of inheritance. Kivan de la alien yibum bein ubas ki hadadininu im nachlanami bein ubas ki hadadininu. This suggestion is rejected, since with regard to the matter of levirate marriage, a son and a daughter are equivalent as levirate marriage is not performed. If the deceased had either a son or a daughter, it stands to reason that with regard to the matter of inheritance, as well, a son and a daughter are equivalent in that the father does not precede the daughter. Ve'ema she'ero zeha'av belamed she'ha'av kodem le'achei ha'av yachal yagdim la'achin tamud lomer hakarov karov kodem. The Gemara suggests an alternative derivation. Why should the father of the deceased inherit before the brothers of the deceased? Say that he should inherit only before his own brothers by interpreting the verse as follows: his kinsman, Numbers 27:11. This is referring to the father, and the Torah teaches that the father precedes the father's brothers in inheriting from the deceased. One might have thought that the father of the deceased should precede the brothers of the deceased in inheriting from him. Therefore, the verse states next, hakarov, to him, teaching that the closer one is to the deceased, the earlier one is in the order of inheritance. Achei ha'av. The Gemara responds, Achei ha'av lo tzrich yikra, Achei ha'av mikoach man, ka'ach asu mikoach av, ka'av yarsi achei ha'av. The Gemara responds, a verse is not necessary to teach that the father of the deceased inherits before the father's brothers, for the following reason. By whose virtue do the father's brothers come to inherit from the deceased? By virtue of the father, as their right to inherit is a result of their being brothers of the father of the deceased. Could it be that while the father is still alive, his brothers should inherit? The Gemara therefore concludes that the father precedes the brothers of the deceased. V'ha kari lav, hachi kasivi, dichsiv, im ein achim la'aviv, karai shelo kisitran kasivi. The Gemara challenges, but the verses are not written that way as it is written, and if he has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his father's brothers. Numbers 27:10. And only later is it written, and his father has no brothers, then you shall give his inheritance to his kinsman who is next to him. Numbers 27:11, indicating that the father, whose right to inherit is derived from the term kinsman, inherits only after the brothers of the deceased and his own brothers. The Gemara explains the verses are not written in order, since, as explained earlier, it is not reasonable that the father's brothers inherit before the father. Therefore, it must be that the inheritance of the father is not written in its proper place, and he may inherit even before the brothers of the deceased. Tanya, as zo daresh Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yossi, ish kiamus, ubein ein lo. Bimkom bas, atam ma'avir nachala min ha'av. V'i atam ma'avir nachala min ha'av bimkom achin. The Gemara records an additional derivation for the halacha that the father precedes the brothers of the deceased. And this Tana cites it from here, as it is taught in a Batra. Rabbi Yishmael, son of Rabbi Yossi, taught this halacha. It is written, if a man dies and has no son, then you shall pass his inheritance to his daughter. Numbers 27:8. In the rest of the passage, the verse employs the phrase, and you shall give. It is only in this verse that it employs the phrase, and you shall pass. Based on this, Rabbi Yishmael teaches that in a case where there is a daughter, you pass an inheritance to her from one who appears to have precedence, namely the father, and by inference, you do not pass the inheritance from the father in a case where there are brothers of the deceased. Ve'ema bimkom bas atamavir nachla min achin. The Gemara asks, but why not say that in a case where there is a daughter, you pass the inheritance to her from the brothers?